Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Travel Coach Network podcast. It is I, Sahar Rose DeVore, the founder of the Travel Coach Network and the creator and instructor of the Travel Coach Certification Program. Today, I have a very special guest, Lisa Imogen Eldridge. She is a self-confessed solo travel addict who has been to 147 countries, and 115 of them were solo. She runs the award-winning solo travel blog, Girl About the Globe, empowering women to travel solo and helping vulnerable girls about the globe. Lisa, thanks so much for joining us here on the Travel Coach Network podcast. We are excited to chat with you today.
Me too. Thank you so much for inviting me on.
Wonderful. Well, we have a lot to dig into here with you being at 147 countries. I thought 84 of mine were a lot. Um, but tell us a bit about yourself, your background, and where'd your passion for travel stem from?
So I am a divorcee. I think I can still say that. I got divorced about 12 years ago. And then that's when I actually started my blog. So I took off traveling when I was 33 and started my blog to document life after divorce. But that wasn't actually where travel began for me because I was traveling a lot in my 20s. I was working, volunteering, doing whatever I could to kind of avoid the 9 to 5 lifestyle. So, well, actually, my love of travel came from being at junior school. I remember being in a class, and the teacher had a friend come and help out with the class, and she'd just come back from New Zealand, and she had those wooden sticks, and she was playing the wooden stick game. And she'd brought that back from New Zealand with her. And I just remember being so fascinated about this different culture that I didn't know anything about. And I think that's where my inquisitive nature for, there's a whole world out there and all I know is my hometown. But I didn't actually get to travel until I was about 19. And then I went to Spain with a friend. And then I just got the bug, really, just flying out of England, being, when you arrive in a different country and you just get different smells and the heat feels different. And it just opened up a whole new world for me. So from the age of 19, I got my wanderlust, but I do remember it stemming from that class of the wooden stick game. And then I did actually end up going to New Zealand. I think when I was 25, and I learned a little bit more about that stick game when I was there. Yeah,
I
finally
love
got to go there after, I don't know, 18 years or something of seeing it.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, what a lot of people don't know is I was just recording on your podcast before we were doing you here on your
Mm.
again podcast. And I also was talking about how I got really inspired to travel through a class that I was taking too. So I think that travel is something that is really important in the education system too. Hearing that you also were inspired, as simple as a guest coming in and they have sticks from another country.
Yeah.
I think it's, I don't know, that's something I never really thought of until you just said that there, but I can definitely understand, why it's so important to include travel in any way, shape, or form in the education system.
Definitely. And I don't even think that was part of the curriculum. I just think it was a friend who had just come back from
Yeah.
traveling. She said, "Oh, I'll just come to your class and I'll show them this game." But yeah, that just sparked my curiosity in the world. So yeah, I think you're right, actually. It needs to be in the education system a bit more because learning about other cultures is so important.
And just getting curious about it too. We only know what we are aware of. So to know that there's a whole world of people and culture and ways of living that we are not exposed to
Yeah.
really helps spark our sense of curiosity, though, too. Um, well, you said that you started traveling, obviously, at a younger age, but then you started your blog after, kind of documenting your journey after divorce. You've obviously been to a lot of places. Is there a time that you can remember or an experience or a place that you remember that really truly made an impact on you or what we say transformed you in some way?
Yeah, I think it's the first, well, I don't think it is the first time that I traveled solo. And I imagine it's the same for everybody. I imagine everybody who travels alone always remembers their first time because it's such an impact. So I was temping, I was saving up loads of money, waiting to go with a friend to Southeast Asia and Australia. And instead of me just going by myself, I thought, I can't do this by myself. I need to wait for my friend to come. So I was waiting longer than I probably should have done. And then we took off. We went to Southeast Asia. We spent 9 weeks together. And I was just starting to feel a little bit trapped and like I couldn't breathe and really needing my freedom. And we got to Australia. And then I just knew that I had to be alone. I was really scared because I've always been really shy. I'm quite introverted, so I've never really been that confident. I'm a lot more confident now than I've ever been. And I just couldn't be with somebody 24/7. It was just too much for me. So I decided to spend one night alone. And I met her at the train station and I said, I really need to spend tonight alone. I'll meet you back at the train station tomorrow and then we can continue. And that night, I just felt so free and so liberated. And I thought, I can do this. I don't really want to be traveling with somebody else now. Not that I can't do it, but 9 weeks with someone 24/7 is quite a lot. So I then met her the following day and said, look, I'm not going to continue the rest of the trip. I'm going to be by myself and I'm going to travel around. And then she left. And then I just didn't know what I was doing. I just cried and thought, what am I doing? I can't do this. And then called home and was that belief was reinforced to me. What are you doing? You can't do this by yourself. At least is it if there's two of you, you're going to be safe. And so I kind of took that on. And for the next couple of days, I was just like having this in a conflict with myself. And then I got invited on a road trip. So I was sharing a dorm in Adelaide. So I got invited on a road trip and I went away for the day with these two people that I just met. And I had such a good time. And that was the beginning of all my little mini adventures around Australia, meeting different people with the same mindset as me, people who also valued freedom. Then from Australia, I ended up traveling back through Southeast Asia by myself, which I never thought I would ever have been able to do. So I went to Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos was my final destination before I was flying back to the UK, which was the end of my year-long trip. And this is the moment that still kind of gives me chills, is sitting there in a bar or outside a bar in Laos with half a lager and just toasting myself and just thinking, wow, I've done that. I've just done a whole year of mainly solo travel because I've been alone, even though I've met up with different people and had many adventures, but I've done this by myself. And that sense of achievement, it was just amazing. And then I went back to England and then that just gave me the confidence to just want to get back out there and do more solo travel. So that point for me was really transformational because it gave me the belief that I can do it.
Yeah, when you say that you just sat there and cried at night, I remember I did that happened to me as well 2 times. So my two first trips. Obviously, all my trips were solo. I've obviously taken my mom on a couple vacations and had her fly out and meet me places. But my two first backpacking trips was the first one to Europe, and then my second one, I came back after Europe and I repacked a bag and I bought a one-way ticket to Costa Rica. And those two first nights, I was in staying with the second one was a couch surf and the first one was a family friend. And I remember lying in bed at night crying, being like, what am I doing? Like, can I do this?
Yeah.
And but it soon went away and I kept on going and we were fine. So and I've heard that before from others. It's like, what am I doing? Like, your emotions and these fears. But I think all of that is still part of that whole experience of you're facing these fears, you're doubting yourself in some way, but yet look at what you're proving yourself to be able to do and accomplish and achieve, and look what it's done for you in your life, right?
Yeah, and I'm now a really big advocate of personal development, and I'm constantly doing personal development on myself. And I've realized that that is just your survival brain that keeps you safe. It wants to keep you safe. And any time that you're taking yourself out of your comfort zone, it makes you doubt yourself and you question your abilities because it wants to keep you safe. So it is perfectly normal. So that really helps, knowing that's just the way that your brain works. Because even now, and I've obviously been to a lot of countries, I still get those nerves. I still get that anxiety and what am I doing? I've just booked a month-long trip for December for the Pacific Islands. And I had that, should I be doing this? What am I doing? And like, the flight's going to be really long. Can I really do that really long flight? And who am I going to be sharing a room with? And just, but it's just human nature, isn't it? And you just, if you give in to those thoughts, you just won't end up going. So you just need to book that flight and just take that first step. And it's never as bad, or it's never as scary as what
Yeah.
your mind builds it up to be. That's what I've learned. It's just, yeah, what is on the other side of fear is so much more rewarding than sitting behind that barrier of not doing anything.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Every single time I would come back from a trip, every single time I would be like, who is that person? How did she do it? It's like
Yeah.
it's like a whole persona that I have. And then when I go on my next one, the moment I pack my bag, I get to the airport and get through security and I'm sitting there waiting to board my flight. I'm checked right back into the same mindset. It's like it's this persona avatar that we, especially as women, are able to do, because you are a different person when you're traveling. We heighten our awareness. We, are, hoping and looking for something different than how we are in our daily life. And it's just absolutely incredible of just how powerful travel can be on our mindset and just our personal development as a whole.
Yeah. And it's really interesting that within, I'd say, 24 hours of going on a trip, I just go into this autopilot, because I've obviously, every single country I go to is different because I'm trying to see every country in the world. But the way that I prepare for a trip, or everything that I've learned from my previous trips, is still there. So I'm just then using those muscles again. So I just go into autopilot and it's okay. Yeah, I remember how to do this and I'm going to be okay.
Yeah. Take us back to where you were talking about traveling after your divorce. There's a lot of women, and I know a lot of our travel coaches work with women going through different life changes like that, different transitions in their life, or heartbreak or divorce, those kind of times in your life. And what did travel do for you during that time? Did it teach you anything? Did you realize anything? Take us back to, where your mind was at post, or as you're going through divorce, or post divorce as you were traveling.
So I was going through divorce at the time because it took a little while to do the whole process. And I just remember, before I was applying for the process of the divorce, because it was amicable, but I was just feeling very lost and I didn't know what to do with my life. I didn't know who I was after being in a long-term relationship, because that was longer than the marriage. And I thought, okay, what makes me happy? And what had always made me happy, and I'd always prioritized, every single penny I'd ever saved would be for travel. So I thought, well, travel makes me happy. So I need to fling myself back out into the world and find myself again. And I know it sounds really cliche, but I do think that when you're alone and you're traveling and you're solo, that is such a great medicine for a broken heart, even though it's very hard. But even staying at home is very hard. So you might as well be somewhere that's got a beautiful beach and it's amazing, rather than kind of grieving in your hometown where you've got memories of everything. So I think I was probably distracting myself, but I knew that travel made me happy. So I went out there I actually probably didn't pick the easiest countries for a woman who was going through a divorce. I went to Asia at the time. Well, I did a few different trips, but the first one was Asia. So I flew straight to China. Everyone was staring at me when I got to Beijing. And when I travel, I generally dress down and I don't wear any jewelry. I don't generally wear any makeup. So I try and be invisible, but you can't be invisible in China when you're a white blonde woman. So everyone was staring at me, and I remember just feeling really uncomfortable and thinking, this is just really not a good idea. And what am I doing? Why am I just not back at home? But the only way was up for me then. There were nights when, I was crying into my pillow and I was grieving and going through the whole process of leaving a husband, leaving my home, leaving another family, because it's not just your partner, it's the whole other family that you've been part of. So it was such a massive transition. I had no idea what I was going to do apart from travel. And the weird thing is that even before I went on that first trip, people were saying to me, so what are you going to do when you get back from Asia? And I just said, I don't know. I haven't even gone yet. That's just, I'm not the kind of person who really plans long term. I need to just go and see how I feel. And then I always kind of get guided to go for the next step or the next country or whatever. So the first few weeks were quite tough, but I just grew stronger and developed more skills, especially being in a country where I can speak the language. Got more confident, came back, and then was ready to go to Africa. And Africa really grew me. I'd suggest this for anybody who's going through heartache or heartbreak, to go on a camping trip in Africa, because it really makes you appreciate everything in life, makes you appreciate hot water, makes you appreciate where your next meal is coming from. You really see poverty in some areas, and it just grounds you and just makes you feel really humble and makes you realize that your problem is quite insignificant in what is happening in the world. But also because I was camping, I was very nervous, scared traveller at the beginning of this 5-week trip in Africa. So I think I went home for 2 months, then signed the first part of the divorce paper. Then went out to Africa and I was camping in the desert. There were huge insects. There were hippo noises at night, and I was freaked out at the beginning. But again, by the end of the 5 weeks, I knew how to navigate Africa. This wasn't a solo trip, this particular bit. But I just grew in confidence again. I think that's all you can do when you take a trip. It grows you. It is uncomfortable, but then change is uncomfortable and it is messy, but you emerge out the other side. And I think what really helped me with that Africa trip is because it was an overland trip. And I remember writing on my blog that with every mile that I'm traveling from one destination up to the other end of Africa, I felt like I was leaving behind the old me. So it really helped me with that transition of leaving behind this scared, like, sunburnt, blonde British girl at the beginning who was freaked out by massive insects, to thousands of miles later developing into a new version of myself.
I love that. I mean, it just really embodies just how incredible travel is for our mind, body, and soul, and how it can, there's a reason why we turn to travel for so many different reasons in our life. But I want to talk a little bit here about your blog. First of all, you talk about in your blog conscious travel. Can you share what you mean by conscious travel?
Yeah, and when I started the blog, which was 12 years ago, I remember coming across this concept of conscious travel by Anna Pollock, and no one else was really talking about it then apart from Anna. And it just kind of sparked that idea in me of, yes, this is what I want to be promoting. I want to be a conscious traveler. And I think it's kind of changed its meaning over the years, for me especially, because back then it meant being environmental, not using plastic and trying to go overland as much as you can rather than flying. But now conscious travel to me means caring about the destination that you travel to and wanting to help the local people in that destination. So, sorry, it's really loud. Is it okay?
Yeah, you're fine.
Okay, and really making an impact and making sure that your dollar goes to help the local people there, but also forming connections with the locals, because for me that's what travel is all about. It's not about a tick list, which is, there's nothing wrong with that, and I have done that in the past, especially in my 20s. But conscious travel to me means caring about the people and the place that you're traveling to and making sure that the locals benefit from your travel. So go to a social impact cafe that might employ disadvantaged people or disabled people from the community, and buying your dinner from there. So, you know, something as little as that, just being mindful of your actions in a country. And also, I think when you're traveling, you're an ambassador for your country, even though you might not think you are, but you might be the only English person that they've met. I've been to places like that where they've never had any English tourists before. And so I'm giving them the perception of, well, this is what a traveler from this country is like. So that's what conscious travel means to me. Yeah.
Yeah, we're hearing a lot of a lot in the travel industry about conscious travel, mindful travel, responsible travel kind of fall under similar categories. And I love seeing and hearing about, the tours that people are booking are, they're designed by the locals in, or maybe it's women experience or something like that. So it's definitely something that is going to be growing in popularity in the travel industry, because I think us as travelers, we don't want to not make a good impact when we travel, but I don't think it's something that was really at the top of mind pre-pandemic. But now that the times have changed and travel has changed, the decisions that we make as travelers, whether it's sustainably or responsibly, I love seeing all these new opportunities and options coming to the forefront for travelers to say, hey, have you thought about booking a tour with this company or staying in this type of accommodation, or volunteering your time doing this or whatever it might be. You also said in your blog that you want to impact the lives of 100,000 vulnerable girls by the year 2025. Can you share more about that?
Yeah, and it's crazy. It's now 2024, because I think I wrote that when it was 2022, and I thought, oh, I've got ages. But now it's 2024 because time is just flying. So the whole point of my blog initially it was to document my life after divorce, and then it evolved into empowering other women to travel solo. And I love doing that, and I'm still very passionate about that. But I feel that as I've evolved, my blog has also evolved, and my 2.0 version of myself wants to impact the lives of vulnerable girls in countries that we travel to. So I'm really passionate about children in conflict zones, and especially obviously with Ukraine and obviously what's happening with Palestine as well. So I give 10% of net profits of any affiliated company. So if anyone books through the blog, I give 10% of my net profits to projects helping vulnerable girls about the globe. Initially, it was aimed at 5 different projects. So it covered a girl's needs, which was education, shelter, water, food, protection. But now I've actually started my own foundation, which is focusing on hope as an additional need. And I'm looking at them at the moment, sending little hope bears to children affected by conflict. So that does also mean conflict zones, but it could also mean conflict as in they've been human trafficked, or domestic violence, or street kids, or any kind of conflict or any kind of trauma. Because the more that I travel, the more that I see the problems in the world. And there are so many kids out there that just need help. So if I can impact, hopefully, the lives of 100,000 by the end of 2025, then that feels like my next mission.
Yeah, I love that. I love that because that's also what travel can do. It can inspire us to want to be better people and to make a better impact, a bigger impact on the world, the planet, the lives of others, whatever that might be. Um, so I love that you're actually taking action and doing something like creating your own foundation because that's not easy. But to have a mission like that is one of such purpose, and the fact that travel itself is the thing that helps you get there. I love hearing stories like that.
Thank you. I think it's important. I think, we're guests in countries, and because I'm trying to visit every single country in the world in my lifetime, I'm traveling to destinations that not many people travel to, and they're the ones that really need the tourism. And some of these countries are so beautiful and they're so underrated, and the people are so proud that you've come to their country. So yeah, there's so much good that we could be doing when we visit a country, just to give back.
Yeah, I love that. Um I can relate to that traveling, and I loved to go to places where I was I was that are not touristy, that, yeah, I stand out like a sore thumb because I'm 6 foot tall and I'm, don't look like them. But those are the places that I found the most homely, the most welcoming. I'd go to, the smallest towns and off the beaten path, and, islands that no one visits because there's not tourism that goes there. And that's where I always felt so welcomed, and the kindness.
Yeah.
And that's where like women sometimes are like, well, it's not safe to travel. But I said this in my TEDx talk, like this world is filled with a lot of really incredibly kind, caring people who want to make sure you're just as okay as they, in their home place. So I think traveling is something that can really open our mind to that. And we can take that and we bring it home to us, and how it shapes us of how we treat others, and, the how we treat others who will come to our hometown. And I think that's really, really important. I say that the world would be a lot kinder of a place if everyone traveled just a little bit more.
Definitely. I also think that when you travel, it makes you understand that deep down everybody's the same. And it's just our conditioning and our education and the way that we're brought up, or our culture basically, isn't it, that defies us or makes us different. But everybody has those needs that I spoke about before. And it's just so interesting. And I love traveling when you can't really speak the language and they can't really speak the language, but you don't need to, because body language and a smile is universal, and you can still have that communication or that bond and connection with someone, even if you can't speak the language. Yeah. So
Perfect. Well, let's before we wrap it up here, I want to do a short bit with talk a little bit more about your blog. So a lot of our listeners are travelers, travel bloggers, travel business owners, travel coaches, of course. And can you give a couple tips on how you were able to create such a successful award-winning blog? How do you monetize it? Are there any strategies that you did? Is it about the content, about whatever it might be? What do you have to share about, creating such an incredible blog as you have?
thank you. I think it kind of just all happened by accident, to be honest. Because I used to work in the travel industry, and I was one of the top salespeople, but I realized it's because I used to just give as much advice as possible, and I was never salesy. So I used to just give the information, and then the people would come back and book. So maybe I've just been able to replicate that with my blog, because my solo travel destination guides are thousands of words long, and I'm not the kind of person who normally uses travel guides. So I created it with me in mind, of a shorter version of a travel guide, and just the no fluff nonsense that I need to know for traveling to a country. So organically, those destination guides have done really well, and they've really helped me rank for solo travel in Dubai, solo travel in Colombia. So I'm really grateful that that has happened, but I think it's because I've niched from the very beginning, not intentionally, but I've niched with solo travel. So that is one advantage. And I think also being quite raw. A lot of my older posts were, they are still quite honest, but now I write more city guides than just solo travel insights. But being quite insightful, being quite raw, being honest about what I'm feeling, talking about the downsides of solo travel, and not just painting a fairy tale picture that, that travelers that you might see on Instagram. Not saying there's anything wrong with Instagram, but it's being raw and open. And then also I now have the podcast, so I'm talking to people more. I'm talking more about my experiences in a country, and I give more information than I do on the destination guides. We have a Facebook community as well, which really helps women travel solo. So I think that, along with the blog, also helps. So I think it's just being consistent. I've been blogging for 12 years. There have been 2 times during the 12 years that I've walked away from it and I've given up. And it's the longest job that I've ever had and that I've created for myself, which is crazy. But there are times when I've just had to pull myself away from it and just have 6 months off and rethink, what am I doing? And like being burnt out, not really knowing what was working, especially when it came to monetizing it. I didn't know how to monetize it properly. I thought, shall I just give this up? Shall I get a 9-to-5 job? Because I was doing travel writing as well at the same time, but then I filtered out the travel writing and just focused 100% on my blog. But I think it's taught me discipline, motivation, not giving up, and it's okay to have a break occasionally and just pause. But then it gives you a chance to rethink, have a look at the overview of it and rethink what isn't working or what could be working better, get new ideas, come back to it with fresh eyes, and then just keep going with it. So I've learned that I'm quite a determined person through this, or I kind of learned that through travel as well. But I think business transforms you in a way, because you have to grow when you're creating something.
Yeah, I mean, business is not easy, whether it's a blog, whether, whatever it might be that you do, it's not easy, just like traveling. It teaches us a lot about ourselves, our sensitivities, problem solving, just so much. So what did you find was how do you monetize your blog? What did you find worked for you? Because I know a lot of people always ask, like, how do I, the same thing you said, how do I monetize this?
Yeah, or one of the times that I did walk away, I realized that I can monetize it with ads. So I came back to it and I actually joined an advertising revenue platform. So that is probably my biggest earner, is with Mediavine, which is an ad network. So it's just a plugin. They do all the work, which is fantastic because I'm not that tech savvy. And the second one is affiliate income. So I'm a really big advocate for G Adventures. I promote them. A lot of people in my Facebook community also use them and recommend them. So whenever I recommend a G Adventures tour, if someone clicks through that link to the G Adventures site, then I also make a profit from that, or a commission from that, which is no extra cost to the person who's booking it. And the next one would also be hotels and hostels, then insurance. And I also have my own products that I am looking at marketing a little bit differently. So I have a solo travel starter bundle, which has got my book in it, a female guide to solo travel, a solo girls first aid kit, which is a little digital kit that I created for myself, because those times when you have doubts, I created this little PDF thing for myself to get myself out of that, out of that funk, and to be able to get excited about my trip again. So I think that's really valuable. And then it's also got a Plan Your Dream Solo Trip course within it as well, which walks through the 12 steps of planning a trip. So I do have my own digital products. I've also got 5 different books, and I've now brought out an app which hasn't been monetized yet, but it's free for everybody. So I'm just looking at just getting as many people onto that as possible so I can give them as many discounts as I can. So my basic monetizing strategy is ad revenue, affiliates, and then it's also selling my own products.
And stuff. Yeah, that makes total sense. Yeah, you'll have to send all that information over so we can link that in our show notes for everyone. Lisa, we're going to head towards the end here, but I always love to ask my favorite question. Is there a fun fact about yourself? It doesn't have to be business or travel related that you can share with our audience.
Yeah, I think it has to be travel related for me because I spent most of my life traveling.
Right.
So I once starred in a Thai soap opera.
It's hilarious. You got that opportunity being in Thailand?
Yeah, I was sat in a cafe in Bangkok and outside in the cafe,
Like you?
and yeah, and these 2 people came up to me and just said, "What am I doing that afternoon?" And I said, "Nothing." This was before I had a laptop and the internet and was properly working on my blog. And they said, "Would you like to be in a soap opera for," I think it was the equivalent of £15. So what's that, about $18? And they were going to give me lunch. So, so I said, yeah. I was backpacking Asia. That was a lot of money to me at the time because I used to think, well, £15 is 3 nights accommodation. So yes, I'll take that.
Exactly how my mind always worked too. So funny. Like solo female travelers, I mean, our minds are just so similar in different ways. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I love that. It's experiences like that you wouldn't get elsewhere, right? If you were not sitting in a cafe in Thailand.
Exactly. And yeah, I always used to say yes to opportunities back then. Or I still do, but I always go with my instinct as well. If it feels right, then I go for it. And yeah, it was a great experience.
I love that. Well, Lisa, thank you so much for joining us today on the TCN podcast. It really was a joy speaking with you.
Thank you so much. It's just really lovely speaking to you. Thanks for having me on.
Chris. Everyone, be sure to follow us on Instagram at the Travel Coach Network. Learn more at thetravelcoachnetwork.com. Come give us a hello in our TCN Global Community on Facebook. You can find the link for that and your free beginner's guide to travel coaching in the show notes. If you know anyone who might be interested in travel coaching, please be sure to send them our way. We would truly appreciate that. And until next time, my fellow wanderers, bye for now.